Good morning. The date is 2nd March 2021. My name is Frank Farmer, and I'm here to interview Lieutenant Colonel Phil Love. This interview is part of the the Veterans History Project. This is a project that's overseen by the Library of Congress, and the object is to record as many interviews as possible with veterans from World War I to the present. These interviews are kept at the Library of Congress. They are open to the public, and the Library of Congress also encourages that these interviews be housed at local venues such as historical societies or museums such as the New Smyrna Beach Historical Museum. So with that background, let me introduce Lieutenant Colonel Phil Love. Phil is a Vietnam veteran, a United States Air Force fighter pilot, served in Vietnam, and we're going to today get his story of his training, his time in Vietnam, and his perspective in that view. Phil flew 151 combat missions in Vietnam. He has been awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. He's also been awarded the Air Medal with 10 oak leaf clusters. So Phil has been there, done that, and it's our pleasure to welcome Colonel Phil Love. Welcome, Phil.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, well, I'm going to start the first question is this. Here we are in New Smyrna Beach, Florida. You are a native of Indiana. You grew up in Indiana, went to school in Indiana. I think you had a business and still perhaps have a business in Indiana. Still spend most of your time in Indiana, but yet you spend several months every year and have for many years here in New Smyrna Beach, Florida. I understand that you have a personal family connection to this area and also a military connection that goes back to World War II. So tell us about that connection, please.
I'll be glad to. It predates World War II by quite a bit. My grandmother was actually born on a pineapple farm in Stuart, Florida, back in the 1800s. When she had gotten married, they moved north and away out of the pineapple business and got in the orange business in Volusia County. They wound up, my mother was actually born in an orange grove in Shiloh, Florida, which is no longer in existence. It's part of the Merritt Island and then part of the Canaveral National Seashore / the Kennedy Space Center. So that town is gone, but they moved to New Smyrna Beach, actually Coronado Beach to be correct, back early on, and so I've been in New Smyrna Beach because of that. And my grandmother was the oldest at the time of 8. Now some of them had died, but she had younger brothers and sisters which had children, and they were all, a lot of them mostly my age or close, and so we have lots of cousins here in the New Smyrna Beach area, and it's just always fun to come back to the family and the beach.
So you really do have a connection here to the
my father was stationed here with the Navy in World War II. They were running crash boats because there was a lot of training in the various airfields that were naval up and down the beach here, from really St. Augustine all the way south. There's lots of old Navy bases. They were doing a lot of training, and they would some of those airplanes would wreck offshore, and they'd have to go out and get them with the crash boats. So they were like PT boats, but they were crash boats to go pick up. So my dad was stationed here, met my mom here, and wound up dragging her back to Indiana after the war. So yes, but New Smyrna has always been our place to go for vacation.
So you went back to Indiana, went to high school in Indiana. If I remember, you graduated in 1964 from high school. Is that correct?
That's correct. 64.
Now, in 1964, Vietnam was just on the cusp of becoming a major conflict. That was at the time when we were beginning to build up our forces in Vietnam. General Westmoreland, the commanding general in Vietnam, was requesting more and more troops. President Lyndon Johnson was agreeing with those, and the buildup was beginning. Really hadn't got involved with heavy casualties yet. There were some casualties. The anti-war movement had not really got started yet. That was a couple years later, but there was a feeling that we were involved in a conflict, and it was going to affect a lot of people. And when you graduated in 1964, tell us what the atmosphere was like with your age group and what the plans were.
That particular time, it somewhat didn't affect, because people I went to high school with, we were all going to go to college, so the draft was always a lingering in the back of your mind issue, because at that time everybody had to sign up, and you were vulnerable to going to Vietnam, and not necessarily that you wanted to, but we were headed to college and didn't really think that hard about it. However, you knew at the end of college somebody's going to own you, and it's the government. So we knew it was there. I think didn't have any reservations against the war, because I kind of subscribed to the domino theory, where as one country falls, the next one's going to fall. The next one. It was pretty obvious that they were being orchestrated by the communist regimes, and so it was no surprise to me that we got involved in it, and so that wasn't really an issue with me.
All right. So when you went to college, as you said, you were aware of the war. You were aware at the end of college you might have to participate. That was kind of there. And did that affect your decision to go into ROTC, Air Force ROTC? Or?
Well, it didn't. It didn't hold me back. The choices really, there's two things that happened there. Going through registration as a freshman, and the sign up, and I'll never forget, I'm walking through the line, and the gal says, well, you got to sign up for phys ed. And I go, phys ed, what for? I said, well, everybody has to take phys ed, unless you take ROTC. What do you mean ROTC? She says, well, we have Air Force ROTC here. Really? And she starts telling me about that. I said, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I'd spent my summers in high school, and I went to Culver Military Academy, which they had summer schools. So I graduated from Culver Summer Schools, which is a military school. Well, I can do that, and the more I talked to them, and they talked about, well, yeah, we mean actually you can get sent to pilot training from here. So they said. And you get credit that counts on your cum from ROTC, and the PE doesn't count unless you're a PE major. I said, well, I'm not that, so I was never going to get credit for it. So I have to go there for a year. It doesn't even count. So I opted for ROTC rather than PE, and one of the wiser decisions I think I ever made. In the meantime, while I was in ROTC, we had the opportunity to get our pilot's license. So I graduated. I got my senior year early on. I had a pilot's license, and life was good. And I wasn't going to be drafted because I'm going in.
Now, what did you major in college?
Well, I was a political science major. I really thought I wanted to go to law school, but I knew the government, that was not going to be an option at the time. They're going to own me at the end of college, and so I thought I'd rather be in the air than on the ground.
Now, you went to Butler University.
Correct.
Where is that located?
It's in Indianapolis. It's a nice liberal arts kind of college and business school in Indianapolis. So.
Now, during those 4 years of college, 1964 to 1968, what was the attitude of your ROTC instructors? How cognizant were they of what was going on in Vietnam and et cetera? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
We had officers assigned to our ROTC unit, and the oldest one, an old lieutenant colonel, and he was an old fighter pilot from Korea, and he was a hoot. He was just hard-nosed, just what you'd expect. We had another one, one of the underlings was a major, and he was a fighter pilot and had been in Vietnam earlier on, and then we had the other guy was a navigator who did most of our educational training. They were great guys. They were very, very talented people. So it was a nice stretch with them.
Now, did they have any insight or advice on the capabilities of the between 1964 and 1968? The war did get heated up.
Oh, yeah.
There were some big battles. The Isha Valley occurred, the Tet Offensive, Battle of Wei. So those 4 years, things really began to get heated up with Vietnam. So, did your instructors, what did they say about the North Vietnamese, both air defenses and the ability of their pilots? Did they pass any of that on?
In ROTC, that wasn't really abridged much because they were there to teach us to be an officer, and we didn't get into what are you going to be doing when you get done from that sense. I mean, everybody became pretty obvious that this is serious. They're shooting, and so you knew you were headed for where you were going to go. You knew at some point you're going to be sent there, and that was fine. But as far as ROTC goes, they weren't real big about tactics or anything like that.
When you did graduate in 1968, you got your officer's commission, and then you embarked on about 2 years of training to become a fighter pilot after that?
It was about 2 years. We had 1 year, obviously, of pilot training, which everybody took the same pilot training, the same airplanes and the same amount of work. I already had my license, so the early on part of it I didn't have much to do with, which was a small Cessna that we'd flown. I'd flown quite a bit when I was in college because the guys in the fraternity would help pay the money, and I had quite a few hours, and they'd pay for the gas, and I'd fly the airplane. So I had it easy early on. As you go through pilot training, there's a bit of a they don't do it formally, but in the end they do. There's basically 2 tracks. You're either going to be there's a chance you could be a fighter pilot or an instructor, and or you're going to be in a multi-engine, multi-faceted airplane, and that happened. The table I was at is a perfect example. Our number 1 guy of the whole class was a navigator that had come back to pilotry. He never missed one question on the tests for a year, so he was academically, superior, and yet my advanced pilot IP refused to sign him off for fighters and trainers. He says, I'm not going to sign you off, and he signed off immediately for me. He thought I could do it. And the navigator was happy. He wanted to go back to the long haulers anyway. It's exactly what he wanted to do. He'd been doing that as a navigator. So water sort of seeks its own level there, and that's kind of what they start to separate how you're going to go.
You had said earlier that while you were going through college, your instructors really had not gotten into the capabilities of the North Vietnamese anti-aircraft defenses or the ability of the North Vietnamese pilots. But as you got into pilot training, I think that may have changed. Did it change some at that point?
It did. However, their primary focus was to teach you how to fly an airplane. And so as you got in the advanced part of it within the advanced trainer that we had, the T-38, which was supersonic and twin engine, and it could do anything. It was a good airplane, and we kind of called it the Jaguar of the Air Force. No gun or anything, but it had the maneuvers. And we started doing a lot harder work with that, and primarily getting people just started taking off and landing and being comfortable in an airplane and that sort of stuff. So again, the tactics were not really addressed in pilot training.
Okay. Now, when you were going through pilot training, what was the attitude of your instructors at that time? Was the attitude to get as many people through as possible, or was there an attitude to call out as many people as possible? Because the military kind of waxes and wanes on that particular subject for various training schools.
Well, in the late 60s as it was at that point, they wanted pilots. So I think they were pretty forgiving on a lot of the latitudes there. You still had attrition, first of all, just when we first showed up at pilot training, and probably 10% got let out just physically, either eyes or something else, whatever. It's interesting how that really happened. But then secondly, there were just those that just couldn't do it. They really just didn't want to.
Yeah.
And so they were not weeding out as stringently probably as they had at some times before, but at that point they wanted pilots.
Okay. As you went through pilot training, and you recognize that at the end of that you're probably going to go to Vietnam, because in 1968 and then you trained in 69 and 70, Vietnam had become a very hot place.
It was hot.
It was a hot topic, not only militarily, it was a hot topic in the United States. The anti-war movement was really getting stronger at that particular time. And were you or your classmates that were going through pilot training, what was the attitude or the atmosphere with the feelings that were existing in the United States at that time? So.
I didn't know anybody nobody, y'all had concerns that you're going to go to war, you're going to get shot at. I don't know anybody that was against the war, per se. I don't know in the groups that I didn't ever remember anybody being kind of a...
So there were groups in your pilots, it sounds like they were like the people that I served with in Vietnam. They were pretty much pro, let's get the job done, let's go out, and they kind of put the what was happening in the society in a separate category. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the way you viewed it also. Mm-hmm. Now, when you were going through your pilot training, you went through several survival schools. You went through water survival school, you went through jungle survival school, and you went through something called global survival school. So you tell us a little bit about those schools and your experience and your training with those, please.
Global survival was the killer. It was in Spokane, Washington. I graduated from pilot training in November of, that would have been 69, I think it was. And November of 69. In the first week, 2 weeks of December in 69, I had to go. It's a 15-day school in Spokane, Washington. Now, it was survival, as it turned out, just to get there. You took commercial flight to Spokane, Washington, and I went out through on Northwest to Minneapolis. We got to Spokane, and it was just socked in. They couldn't land, and we land in Portland, Oregon. And by then it's late evening, and they put us on a bus and drive us back to Spokane. It was 8 hours, and it's snowing like crazy. And we got there about 3:30 in the morning, and the first class, 6 o'clock in the morning that morning. And it snowed, the frost on it was the eeriest place you've ever seen. The chain link fence was just snow covered with like popcorn on everything, and it was, and you couldn't see a foot in front of your hand. Anyway, so survival school starts, and it's serious. This war is serious. I mean, they've got prisoners of war. They're not treating you right. This is for real. And during that time frame, the first week is basically just classroom, how to survive in various, globally. I mean, whether it's in the Arctic or it's in the desert or it's in the jungle. And they go through all of that. And then there's a 2-day in a concentration camp, and it was brutal. That was 48 hours of hell. And he said, "Look, guys, in the end, we're easy on you." And so it was serious business, and they meant it. And then we have to go out for a 1-week trek in the woods. Now you've still got 8 10 inches of snow on the ground. They said, well, that's not enough snow for snowshoes. You could just wear your boots. And it started drizzling rain. And it rained all but one day. And the snow was cascading off of the trees, and you were just soaking wet. It's dark at 4 o'clock. It's just black out there. There's no light. And it was miserable. You had to spend until about 11 o'clock at night to dry your sleeping bag out so you could sleep until you get up the next morning. It was very difficult. I lost 15 pounds, and I don't have 15 to give at the time. I looked like a scarecrow.
So that was the global survival.
That's global, and it was brutal. The next one I went through was the water survival, which happened to be at Homestead Air Force Base, Florida, and that was beautiful. It was about 4 or 5 days, and they go over the fact that, well, by that time I was in fighters, so they knew I was assigned, and so I was in a one-man raft, and they take you up about 500-600 feet, and then just cut you loose. It's parasailing, except now you free fall and you land in Biscayne Bay, and you're in there by yourself. And the guys that are in the airplanes with multi people and all that, they're in the 20-man life raft. I'm in the single raft, and they give you one that won't blow up, so you have to blow it up yourself. There's sharks all over the place out. I couldn't believe it. And you get in there and survive, floating around for 2 or 3 or 4 hours till they finally come up in helicopters and pick you up and take you back. So that was water survival, but at least they didn't starve you to death. And again, it's serious because you're on your own, and so that was a good one. And then when I ultimately later on, as I deployed to Southeast Asia, they take you to the Philippines and you go through jungle survival. And that was again about 4 or 5 days, and that was a really unique experience in itself. And again, they walk in. Here's their tutorial on it. It says, "You guys, you can listen to us, or you don't have to listen to us. But now here's the wall." And as each person was shot down, they've got the wall of fame, and you can see guys you went to pilot training with them shot down, and say, "Okay, this is serious." And so. That's one of their training aids, is that wall. And and that they take you out into the jungle for a few days, and you learn what to eat. And so it was really very interesting, and it was good.
So you've gone through that training, you've gone through pilot training, and you get your orders to go to Vietnam. When did those
actually, I was on my way to Vietnam in the jungle school.
Okay.
So that was those.
And so, what type of aircraft were you going to fly at that time, and did fly in Vietnam?
I got assigned to an F-4 Phantom school at Tucson, Arizona, and it was a little bit unique because I was a first lieutenant by then, and I was in the second class that had started, that was their lieutenants, and it was became our primary mission, basically right out of pilot training. Before that, there's 2 seats in an F-4, and they would up for about the 5 or 6 years prior to that was always they go to the back seat, and guys were there for a long time, which became a little bit of an issue when I got to Thailand. But so it was early on in the system where I was I was second class, and I was the first lieutenant in the front seat of an F-4 Phantom, training at Tucson. That was 6 months of training. And it was balls to the wall training. It was good. Air to ground, air to air. Then you had to do the refuelings. You learn night. But the big thing was just.
Now, when did you arrive in Vietnam? The time frame for that?
Right, I got there in the March of '71, having gone through jungle survival, et cetera, and so March of '71, I'm in Thailand, and they said that I walked into the squadron the very first day, and it was kind of interesting. I heard some guys screaming, "I can't believe it." And I could hear him down the hallway, and this guy's throwing his checklist down the hallway, and it was one of seven. We had 7 backseat pilots, and they had a 48-month patch. They'd been in the back seat 48 months. They called it GIB, guy in the back. And they're captains, and I'm a first lieutenant, and I'm the aircraft commander. They're going to fly with me from time to time. I'm thinking, oh, this is great. And early on, they just put navigators back there, but I wound up flying with all of them, and they got over it. That went away, but the first few days, it was a little tense. They're mad. I said, hey, I don't make the rules. I just show up. And so that was sort of a welcoming call.
Now, when you were sent to Udorn Air Force Base in Thailand, not everyone is familiar with Udorn, and not everyone's familiar that we had an Air Force base, or had other Air Force bases in other countries that flew in Vietnam. Tell us about Udorn Air Force Base. What was it like, and who was there? And before you do that, Phil, tell me what was your unit's primary mission when you got to Udorn?
The squadron, we had 2 fighter squadrons at Udorn. I was in the 13th Attack Fighter Squadron. We had the triple nickel, and then there was also a reconnaissance squadron. So there were 3 squadrons of, if you want to call reconnaissance fighters, they didn't have a gun or anything, but of F-4 Phantoms. There was the RF-4C, which was the Reiki, and then we had the RF-FD, the F-4Ds. Our primary mission, if you call it that, would have been air-to-ground as interdiction to help people, and it was 60%, approximately 60% of our missions were air-to-ground, where we're either, working the trails, working personnel or whatever, and the other 40% was air-to-air, which was mid-cap. Our responsibility is air superiority. And as the time went on, it reversed that, and it was about 60% air superiority and 40% air to ground as things even got hot and heavier. So anyway, we were 60% air to ground.
Okay. Now, you were there at Udorn for a year. About a year, is that right?
Exactly. I got there in March of 71 and left in March of 72.
And you flew 151 combat missions during that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did your unit suffer any casualties, shoot downs, those actually?
Yes, there was multiple times when somebody went down, and in almost every case we got them out of there and they got back, but I could go on about that, but the answer is yes, we did lose some guys. I had one incident where I lost my wingman, and that was just a tragedy. It's one of those really wild things of life. I was the flight lead of a night. In this particular, this was later in the game. We were mid-cap. At night, we were responsible to chase any of the MiGs that came up out of what we called the fish's mouth. But the west side of coming out of Hanoi is a mountain range, and on the ground, it looks like a fish's mouth. And we would watch for anything with our radar, and we also had airborne radar watching it. And as the MiGs would come up at night and try to get the gunships that were working the trails at night, our job was to chase the MiGs. And long and short, that particular mission, the hardest part is just getting the airplane ready for night. And it's because you don't want any lights that are blinding, and there's a bunch of them that you really have to tape off, and they use old electric tape. Everybody had a roll of electric tape, and you'd tape them off. And this guy's first ride at night, and I told him, I said, look, here's what you got to do, and I was telling him. And then we go to our airplanes, we get the airplanes, and his airplane isn't ready. And I said, he's got to get up in that cockpit. They wouldn't let him up there to tape the thing. It takes about 20 minutes. I said, we got to go. You take my airplane. So he took my airplane, and he's in there taping it up when he had time to do it. And then finally they said it's ready to go. Well, I'm taping it up, taxiing out, so we could make our time on station. And I took off, and 20 seconds later he takes off, and that particular airplane, the tower calls him. He's probably 300 or 400 feet in the air, and he says, "You're on fire." And I thought, holy cow. And I looked back and I thought, oh my God, get out. I'm screaming, get out. And he didn't. He went in with the airplane. He didn't get out quick enough. The backseater got out and he was fine. And it really turned out it was a busted gas line that feeds the afterburner. And when you hit an afterburner, it's just pouring gas into the engine compartment, and the plane burned up. I mean, that was my airplane. I never changed airplanes the whole time I was there. That never happened in my entire Air Force career. One time. So, and I lost a wingman. I mean, I felt bad about it. He was early on there, and it just.
Sure. Would any of your, I'll say classmates, but any of your squadron mates, were they shot down, end up as prisoners of war during their period of time?
Well, yeah, and we talked about getting hot and heavy. The last 4 or 5 months, we went to strict crew integrity, and so the front seater and back seater are always crewed the same ones at that point, because we've gone pretty much to air. And there's a lot of coordination between the radar, the guy in the front, and weapons, and it pays to have continuity in that particular arena. So we went to strict crew continuity, and my backseater was an Air Force Academy graduate. He was a navigator, and he was good. He was an excellent guy, and I was glad. He was my roommate. I had 4 roommates. We had a double the way we had it set up, and he was my roommate. And so when I left, he extended for another 6 months, which guys could do. And it wasn't a month after I left, he got shot down and captured. I talked to him a few years later. They took him up north. Well, he was over in the north when he went down. So not only did they catch people, but they caught my backseater.
Yeah, as you said, he survived.
He survived, and by then it was 72, and the thing was over in 73. He was there like a year and a half, or a little over a year. I think he was there, something like that.
Well, besides the combat part of being at Udorn, tell us about what was life at Udorn Air Force Base. How was the food? Did you have any recreation facilities, or tell us a little bit about Udorn?
Well, it was actually very nice. The Air Force had done a nice job. It was an old Japanese base from World War II. And the old tower was still there. I've got pictures of it. It was cute. The Japanese tower was still on. They don't use it, but it was just there. They had a nice officers club which served excellent food, open 24 hours a day. You could always get something to eat. And obviously they had mess halls for the enlisted troops, which once in a while we'd run over there if there was a reason that we didn't go to the officers club. But there were also we had 2 Thai restaurants on base, which were just outstanding. Swimming pool, tennis courts. They had a 9-hole golf course, not part of the Air Force. They might have had to have built it. It was not too far just off base, was a golf course, 9 holes. And so I'd play golf about once a week and played tennis almost every day. And
seems a little strange to be one day flying missions over North Vietnam and the next day on a golf course. But I guess that's kind of part of Vietnam.
It was about 15 minutes a day of just really hairball. Now, it doesn't mean for an hour or 2 you weren't hairball getting there, but it was just the rest of the time, I mean, you had to really take it easy.
Now, in most military camps, the military personnel find a way to have their own recreation, adopt pets, these kind of things. Did your unit have any pets, or?
Oh yeah, actually, right when I got there, within a month after I'd gotten there, also on base, I mentioned the squadrons we had, but there was also Air America had a huge contingent of helicopters and cargo airplanes and T-28s, trainers that they were trained in the Laotians to fly. And about a month before I had gotten there, an Air America guy had gotten shot down in northern Laos, and our squadron happened to be up that day and did search and rescue for him and held the enemy off of him until he could get out, and he was thankful for that. And so we were the 13th TAC Fighter Squadron Panther Pack, and he got back, he was happy. He went over to Burma and found a Black Panther cub and bought it and gave it to the squadron. So about a month after I got there, we get this Black Panther as a squadron mascot, which our patch was a Black Panther, as the head of a Black Panther. So it was Eldridge, and we named him Eldridge because of Eldridge Cleaver, a Black Panther, against the war, and so we call him Eldridge.
So you kept this Black Panther, fed a panther,
Yep.
kept him pinned, and how long was that a whole time you were over
The
there?
whole time, the rest of the time I was there, they built a cage alongside the building. But we'd pick him up. I was carrying him as a cub, and I've got pictures standing there with, Eldridge, and he was just calm and could be, like to wrestle a little bit. You had to be very slow, but he wasn't real fast. Tail out, it was just drag the ground. He was a Black Panther. I mean,
Just out of curiosity, what happened to Eldridge?
I had to ask around about that. I'd heard that when the war went down, they took him back to the Phoenix Zoo, and about, let's see, that would have been early '80s. I was on a deployment when I was in the reserves, and we'd flown out to Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix. In the afternoon, I said, I got to get out of here. I got to go see Eldridge. And I used the staff car, and I went over to this other side of the Phoenix, which is a pain to get across. That town was never easy to drive in. And I get to the zoo, and it's 4:30, and I said, hey, she said, we close at 5. I said, I got to see Eldridge. She said, it's raining, he won't be out. I said, I got to see him. I got to see Eldridge. She says, I'll just go on. She's down there on the left. It's that cage, big cage. And so I get down there. There's no Eldridge. I start, and I can see this stone building up in the far corner. And she said, he'll be inside. It's drizzling. And we came out. And he walks down. He walks back down, and I'm at the corner, and there's a plaque representing our squadron, the 13th, and it was a bronze plaque that they had on there talking about Eldridge and how he's this mascot, but because we saved a guy. And Eldridge comes down, and on an old railroad tie that they had alongside, he sits down from here to there, and he sits down and he just looks at me. He says, Eldridge, how's it going? He says, it's going great. I said, and I talked to him for 5 minutes.
Is that right?
And he finally gets up and he just kind of looks at me, and he walks on, he starts back, and there's 2 females in there, and about halfway back there, he walks over, he mounts one of them, and he turns around and he looks at me. He just sort of like smiled, and he walks back in the cage, and I left. That's Eldridge. It's a true story. I've got the pictures of him on the bench, and I didn't take a picture of him.
Oh my gosh,
It was a classic. So Eldridge was one of the. He was
you rotated back from Vietnam in 71?
72.
72.
Spring of 72.
You got out of the active duty, but you stayed in the reserves. Is that correct?
Well, I was so young. I'd been in the Air Force 3 years and 8 months total, including Vietnam, including pilot training. I was told I was done because now the war is winding down, and they said, well, you owe the Air Force another year and 2 months, 2 or 3 months, or something like that. I forget what it was that I needed to stay for the original 5-year commitment. And I said, they said, but you can join a Garter Reserve unit, and it'll double that time. So it'd be round figures, 3 years in the Garter Reserve unit, and you get out. And it was ironic. You got to go back to how young I was. In the wing commander of the base that I had just been sent to in the F-4 Phantom, and he says he's too young, and so he has to have. He's not combat ready. He needs 2 rides in every phase of the F-4 Phantom. That's 12 rides. There's night, day, air to ground, air to air, nuke drops. There's 12 rides with an IP, instructor pilot. I've been in the front seat getting shot at for a year, and I'm not combat qualified. I was furious. And that week is when it came out, the Palace Chase. It was very weak in the newspaper. It's just one of those things that if you could join a Guard or Reserve unit, you get out. I said, that's me. And on Thursday, I'd gotten there on a Monday. On Thursday, I'm filling these papers to go to a Guard Reserve unit, and I'm not taking 12 rides in an IP to do that. So I was.
So you joined the Guard unit, and you stayed in the reserves until you retired in 1989. Is that correct?
That's correct. The reserves was an outstanding, great guys. All had combat time. I was in the reserve unit I was in. We were flying A-37 A models and then B models, which is a small fighter with a gun in it, and you could drop bombs. And then we transitioned after about 8 or 9 years. We transitioned out of that into the A-10 Warthog, and that one, the gun is incredible. I mean, I love the gun. I didn't particularly like the airplane. It's too slow. It's not a fighter. It's a great gun. And they were starting a new F-4 unit over at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, so I put papers in and fortunately got in there and went back over to the F-4 Phantom. In the last 8 years, I was flying in the reserve unit at Wright-Patterson and the F-4 Phantom again.
Now that you're retired, do you still fly any aircraft? Or?
Yeah, over the years I've had 3 private type airplanes, down to 1 now. I've still got a old Aeronca Champ, a tail dragger, 65 horsepower, no lights, no radios. You got to prop it to start it. It's canvas and wood spars in the wings. I mean, it's back to nature. That's flying.
So, Colonel Love, we've went through your career from your college days, your family connections here in New Smyrna Beach, your combat duty in Vietnam, your reserve duty, and I'd like to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank you for your service. Thank you for taking the time to give us this interview. I'm sure that many people will enjoy looking at it and studying it. And I guess the last question I have for you, you and I have both Vietnam veterans, have a 50-year perspective now to look back on Vietnam. So from that 50-year perspective, is there anything you think that we could have done different, should have done different, or was world events at that time just taking us along as it did?
As it did. I get upset because I get some guys kind of jab me. He says, "Oh yeah, you were in the Vietnam War. You're the ones that lost. We lost the war. We lost the war with you." And I said, "No. We won the war, but the politicians lost the edge." And we had brought them to their knees. It was just a year after I left there. I mean, we were starting doing what they finished up doing in December back of '73, I guess it was, and I left in '72. We were dropping munitions that were they were smart bombs, not dumb bombs, laser guided bombs. We were taking out anything we wanted to, and we owned the air, and we didn't own the ground, but we could take carrying on the ground, and it just saddens me that we had them at their knees. I think they finally said later on, "You guys quit one day too early," and it just makes you sick of all the work and the blood and tears that went on, and then the politicians give it up.
Well, I'm sure that you do as I do. Often think about the 50-some thousand casualties that the United States suffered. But at this point, Colonel, I'm going to end the interview. And again, thank you very much for taking the time to come and give us this insight. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.